Mike Johnson no longer has an effective majority in the House of Representatives. It is as if he is not the Speaker of the House. Only in title is Mike Johnson carrying around that gavel because he has no power. And that is a big problem for Donald Trump. Not because he wants to pass legislation or he even remotely cares about Mike Johnson, but because it is humiliating. It is driving home the message that Donald Trump has zero political capital, no political power, that he himself is weak because Republicans, both in passing away and leaving Congress through resignation, have left Donald Trump and Mike Johnson politically impotent. But Mike Johnson's got a last-ditch effort. He's got a Hail Mary plan to save it all, and it's already blown up in his face. We're going to get into it all, but I want to start with what I think was the perfect analysis from Rachel Maddow of why Mike Johnson is so desperate to try to save Trump. Of course, we're going to get into how it's blowing up in his face, but I think what Maddow said right here about the state of Trump and Johnson really breaks down why the panic is so bad.
The people, by and large, stand in opposition to Trump. And that is evident not just in the polling, as Trump's approval ratings fall through the floor, particularly with independents, but also just in absolute terms. I mean, his approval ratings have fallen through the floor and then down into the basement and then through the basement floor into the bedrock. I mean, he is just despised as a political leader in this country in almost unprecedented terms. And at the same time, the people have been willing to show that, not just in the polls, but also in the streets, in large, diverse, sustained, widespread, ongoing, relentless, effective, nonviolent protest against him at levels beyond what anybody expected and with infinite capacity for future growth. As long as those protests stay nonviolent, they have infinite capacity for future growth and they are poised for explosive growth. Trump and his administration are absolutely undone by the protests. They cannot handle them at all. The closest he can come to handling them is to pretend that they are not happening. These protests are popular. They are effective. They are seen as being on the right side of history. They are seen as being on the right side of the American credo. They are attracting new kinds of people to do new kinds of protest all the time. And that means at a popular level, the opposition to Trump is big, organic, growing, and sustainable. And in political science terms, when it comes to standing up against a despot anywhere in the world, that popular opposition is the closest thing we have to magic.
Jon Stewart made a funny joke last night about Donald Trump and how unpopular he is. As people rightfully say that Donald Trump is America's Hitler. J.D. Vance said Trump was America's Hitler, and Stewart retorted, well, it's actually not technically true because Donald Trump is a lot less popular than Hitler was. And it's true, Donald Trump has lost all of the popularity that he had going into 2025. Donald Trump rode this wave that was largely a creation of the MAGA media saying that his victory represented some sweeping cultural movement, that he blew Kamala Harris out and everything that he did would be exalted by the masses. And then he started doing stuff and it all fell apart because Donald Trump was never popular and Donald Trump will never be popular. And it's the reason why the votes that Republicans are trying to take in the House aren't even happening at this point. It's important context before we get into Johnson's plan because it has to do with how he's trying to save the House. How the House slumped to historic lows of productivity in 2025. Despite holding a governing trifecta, Republicans labored to steer the tightly divided House with fewer votes and fewer bills that became law than almost any session in the last 2 decades. The Speaker also attempted to avoid votes on other measures the president opposed, including legislation to compel the Justice Department to disclose materials regarding Jeffrey Epstein. That generated so much resistance in his own ranks that it fueled a record number of successful efforts to go around Johnson and force legislation to the floor. That can be done by a discharge petition, which we've seen countless so far in this Republican majority. Okay, so this is the least productive and least effective Congress we have ever seen. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone. But what is happening right now is Mike Johnson literally just giving up. Republicans are polling votes daily. They don't want to take them because they know what's going to happen. They're going to lose those votes. And that's humiliating to Donald Trump. He knows that. He knows that it makes him look weak. And he knows that ahead of the midterms, if he can't govern, why would voters continue to give him a majority? Democrats have been able to effectively govern through discharge petitions in the minority. So if you want to push back against Trump, you know what you have to do. But Mike Johnson is saying, screw all that, last-ditch effort with this plan that even Republicans are already criticizing. Speaker triggers fear of massive backfire with plan to save midterms for GOP. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson could be preparing a last-minute pitch to salvage 2026 for the Republican Party, a political analyst has claimed. It could be a move that makes the GOP nervous, as CNN analysts Lauren Fox and Sarah Ferris argued. An economic bill could be a chance for Johnson to revitalize interest in the Trump agenda, but it could massively backfire for Johnson, who gave instructions to GOP lawmakers to pitch in with new ideas. Johnson has instructed the chairman to come up with a menu of ideas they'd like to see in another GOP economic bill. Fox and Ferris wrote, but whether that bill is focused on healthcare, tax policy, or further deficit reduction is still not clear. And it will be difficult for Johnson to start cobbling together a new bill when he is still constantly quelling internal fights about GOP priorities on the floor and begging members to show up for votes with no room to spare in their narrow margin. Last week alone, GOP leaders lost a floor vote they didn't even realize was in trouble and were forced to pull several other measures from their agenda. Fox and Ferris compared the upcoming economic bill to that of the GOP's Obamacare repeal effort in Trump's first term. They wrote Johnson's Agenda 2.0 plan is a long-shot effort that comes with no shortage of potential downsides for him and for the party. Trying and failing, like Republicans did with Obamacare and their repeal effort in 2017 ahead of Trump's last midterm, could highlight GOP ineptitude just months before the election, and conservatives are already telegraphing they want to see significant cuts to a federal budget that moderates and struggling to defend on the campaign trail. It does not appear to align with centrist Republican Party views, though, and Johnson will have a tough battle on his hands if the likes of Nebraska's Don Bacon and New Jersey's Jeff Van Drew are to be believed. Both told CNN they would be more interested in bipartisan wins than anything else. Well, do something stupid, they will, because Mike Johnson, in a moment in which Donald Trump has zero political capital to offer up, is planning to bring forward a massive economic package. Now, if there is one thing that we know, is Donald Trump's package is not massive, and his economic plan is terrible. Donald Trump is deeply, deeply, deeply underwater on the economy at large. On any economic issue you look at, Donald Trump is struggling, whether it be how people view the direction of the country, how they view the economy currently, how they view the job market. It's all bad. It is all bad for Donald Trump. So Mike Johnson deciding that Republicans are going to spend the next couple of months talking about a Trump economic plan, why on earth do you think that's going to save you? And it only sets up Republicans to fail, that this is not going to pass. I know that for sure. Whatever happens, it will not pass because Don Bacon, Van Drew, these are Republicans who want to see bipartisan support, right? Because they want to be able to go back to their district when they're running for re-election and say, I got a bipartisan bill done. We can work across the aisle. We can salvage this. No Democrat is going to get on board with anything that Donald Trump is going to do. So it's non-existent. If Mike Johnson brings this bill forward, what he will be doing is presenting an economic package that will be rebuked by Republicans. That will be the closing message for Mike Johnson and Donald Trump going into the midterms, that these two have screwed you so badly that their own party is going to be voting against an economic package. That's how bad things are. So Mike Johnson has really no options right now except to sit with his thumb up his tush, which, I don't know, people have made some comments about, what Mike Johnson prefers when it comes to favored partners, so maybe that's not the worst reality for Mike Johnson. But this is all he has to do. All he has to do for the rest of this time that he is Speaker of the House, which is about to be shorter and shorter every day, is watch Democrats successfully bring discharge petitions to the 218 votes they need, have votes that he doesn't want on the floor, and say to reporters, I haven't lost control of the House when he hasn't. That is the reality that Mike Johnson has to live in for the rest of his speakership. And that doesn't seem too fun. It doesn't seem too fun for Mike Johnson, but that is where he is at. You can bring the bill, have a blast, knock yourself out, but what it's going to require is you to be prepared for your own party to rebuke Donald Trump's economic failure. That is where Mike Johnson is at. He is effectively not the Speaker of the House. Let's be real. He's got the gavel, he's got the title, sure. Mike Johnson is not, if we are being honest with ourselves, the Speaker of the House. The House is speakerless because Mike Johnson is simply an extension of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has no political capital within his party. We see that very clearly. And so the midterm message that they are going to be closing on is, I don't know. That is the midterm message. Because what are they going to do in the House? Nothing. Jack shit. They can't. That is Mike Johnson, the least productive Congress. What are we doing? Two sessions in a row? Congrats on that, Mike. Really great stuff. That is what they are working with. And again, this is only compounded by the bad economic data that continues to come out and the bad economic numbers that Donald Trump is staring down. CNN's Harry Enton broke it down in this polling right here.
At this point, Donald Trump on the economy, minus 19 points. Of course, the key reason he got reelected. And at this point, he is way, way, way underwater. And that, I think, is a big reason why the majority of folks view term 2, year 1, as a failure for the man from New York.
Our poll found that Americans think on the economy, the president is making things worse. There are other polls which really dig into some of the specifics there, too.
Yes, that's exactly right. So this is a broad look at the economy, right? You see Donald Trump way underwater at minus 19 points. But look at this. Look at this trend. Recreating jobs, Trump has hurt or helped. You go back in 2024, people looking back at his term 1, the plurality, 47% said, yeah, he helped, compared to just 26% who said he hurt it. Now, It's a total flip-flop. Look at this. The plurality, 43%, say that Donald Trump is actually hurting creating jobs. Just 26% say help. This 43% in terms of hurt is actually lower than Joe Biden was at the end of his presidency in terms of creating jobs. So Trump, not just worse than himself, but worse than Joe Biden was on, of course, an issue that, really goes to the hearts and minds of Americans.
And it's not just jobs either.
No, it's not just jobs, right? So jobs is one thing, but it's the cost of living. We just keep going back to this over and over and over again, John Berman. You heard Mitch Landrieu talk about it in the interview as well that you did in the last block. And just take a look here. Read the cost of living Trump has, hurt or help. In 2024, looking back on term one, it was split. 40% hurt, 40% help. It ain't split no more, baby. It ain't split no more. I mean, just look at this. 57% say hurt, 19% say help. Just 43% of Republicans now say help. This is more of a flip-flop, more of a shift than Anakin Skywalker going over to the dark side in Star Wars #3.
It is bad, getting worse for Donald Trump. That is the state of his economy. That is the state of his house. And Mike Johnson has only made it worse. Only made it worse. He's got no power. That's the state of things. And we are going to revel in that a little bit. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I will see you soon.